You found the podcast, Go Beyond the Brief, where we take a deep dive into the societal currents shaping our lives. Together, we'll explore the often unseen forces at play. We'll examine the research, dissect the data, and most importantly, if you're seeking to understand what's shaping our society, this is the place.
Or hiring, you definitely know the promise of AI, unparalleled speed, efficiency.
Right. These automated systems, they can screen thousands of resumes instantly, use predictive analytics.
They seem to reduce human error, ostensibly. It really sounds like the silver bullet for staffing.
It does.
But here's what we really need to wrestle with today. Every layer of automation you introduce, well, it's also a layer of magnified systemic legal risk.
Yeah, absolutely. If your algorithm is biased, and many can be, you're not just risking one discrimination lawsuit, you're potentially discriminating at scale. And that massive risk is exactly why regulators are moving so fast. We're diving into a really crucial and frankly complex topic today, navigating this rapidly emerging patchwork of U.S. AI employment regulations.
It's a patchwork because there's no central federal law governing this yet. Right?
Exactly, which makes understanding these disparate local and state rules absolutely essential for anyone operating, especially across state lines.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to get into the two jurisdictions that seem to be setting the nationwide standard, or at least influencing it heavily.
That's right.
First, New York City's Local Law 144. That one's already an operational reality. It's been in effect for a bit.
Since July 5, 2023, yeah.
And second, the really big regulatory foundation being laid in California. Their Title II revisions to the Code of Regulations. They're set to dramatically reshape HR tech by October 1st, 2025.
So we need to figure out the scope first. What technologies are actually covered? I mean, is it just fancy AI or simple stuff too?
And maybe more importantly, what specific non-negotiable compliance actions are now required? What do you have to do to stay legally defensible?
Okay, let's start right there with definitions. Because these laws, they're intentionally written to be technology agnostic. They have to be, right?
They need to last longer than the current buzzwords, the current generation of AI tools.
Exactly.
So when the law talks about AI, are we only talking about, deep learning and complex neural networks? Or does a simple keyword filter count? What's the real scope here?
Well, the scope is intentionally massive, designed that way to ensure durability. California, for instance, uses the term automated decision system, or ADS.
ADS, okay.
And that definition is incredibly broad. It covers basically any computational process, whether it's derived from machine learning, statistics, even classic AI that makes or, and this is key, merely facilitates a decision regarding an employment benefit.
Facilitates. Wow, okay. That sounds like the widest possible net.
It pretty much is. That means hiring, promotion, performance reviews, even termination recommendations could fall under it.
So give us some examples of an ADS under California's definition.
Sure. Think about systems that screen resumes based on specific patterns or keywords, or maybe tools that direct job ads to target specific demographic groups online. It also includes systems analyzing audio or video recordings to score a candidate's fit or communication style, or even using digital games or puzzles to assess skills or personality traits.
So if data is processed in any way to help make a key employment decision.
It's likely covered in California, yes.
Got it. Now, how does that compare to New York City's definition? Is it just as broad?
NYC's term is Automated Employment Decision Tool, AEDT. And it's actually a bit narrower in its required function, which is interesting.
How so?
The tool has to substantially assist or replace discretionary decision-making, specifically for hiring or promotion.
Okay, so substantially assist or replace, what does that mean practically?
Well, imagine a simple third-party background check tool. If it just delivers raw data like criminal records or credit history, that might not qualify as an AET because a human still makes the entire decision.
Right, it doesn't replace the discretion.
Exactly. But contrast that with an automated ranking system that scores candidates and, say, auto-rejects everyone outside the top 10%. That definitely qualifies because it's removing or heavily replacing human discretion in the screening process.
That makes sense. Okay, one point from the sources that I just can't get past is the applicability threshold in California. Who does this actually apply to?
Yeah, that's huge. The regulations apply to nearly all businesses operating in the state that regularly employ 5 or more employees.
5 or more. That's tiny.
It is, and that low applicability bar is why these regulations are such a potential game changer. It means small businesses maybe using an affordable, off-the-shelf recruiting platform. They're now suddenly under the same complex legal scrutiny regarding algorithmic bias as, the biggest tech firms in Silicon Valley. It democratizes the compliance burden in a way.
Right. And that scrutiny is tied directly to California's existing anti-discrimination laws. Let's shift fully to California's focus now, because this really seems to be where the liability rubber meets the road. The Title II revisions explicitly extend the Fair Employment and Housing Act, that's FEAA, its anti-discrimination protections directly to the use of AI and these ADS tools.
And what's really critical here is that the prohibition covers both intentional discrimination, what lawyers call disparate treatment.
Like deliberately setting a tool to exclude a certain group.
Correct. But it also covers practices that have a disparate impact, meaning they unfairly screen out a protected group, even if the intent behind the algorithm or its use was completely neutral. California is really trying to smoke out those hidden biases that might be baked into the training data or the system's logic.
And that brings us directly to this specific ban on proxies. This sounds complicated. How does a seemingly innocent piece of data become, well, legally toxic?
Yeah, proxies are a major focus. A proxy is essentially a neutral-seeming data point that happens to be highly correlated with a protected characteristic like race, national origin, gender, age, disability. So the law prohibits using something like, say, zip codes or maybe even the type of undergraduate institution someone attended. If that data effectively stands in as a substitute, as a proxy for a protected basis, you absolutely cannot legally consider directly.
So like using zip code as a stand-in for race, potentially.
Precisely. But the concept, and this is where it gets even more complex and frankly a bit terrifying for developers, it goes one layer deeper. The proxy for a proxy.
A proxy for a proxy. Okay, unpack that.
This is where algorithms start making connections that sometimes humans can't even easily trace back or wouldn't consciously make.
Yeah.
It's when systems analyze seemingly benign data points, maybe a candidate's vocal tone in an interview recording, their facial expressions during a video assessment, or even reaction time in a screening game.
Things that seem objective on the surface.
Exactly. But these things, seemingly neutral, can easily correlate with protected characteristics. Think about vocal tone potentially correlating with national origin or a non-native accent, or reaction time potentially correlating with age or a neurological disability.
Ah, I see. So a system might penalize someone for, say, a slightly slower reaction time, not realizing it's linked to a protected condition.
Precisely. And that is where the law steps in and says, hold on, liability can be assigned. The employer has to understand, or at least try to understand and account for the correlations their models are making, even the indirect ones.
That really forces a serious compliance conversation inside companies, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So in California, with all this focus on proxies and disparate impact, are companies legally mandated to perform bias testing on these ADS tools before they use them?
Okay, this is a key difference between California and, say, NYC. In California, it's not a direct legal mandate that says you must audit, but it's a very powerful de facto requirement.
De facto, how so?
Because the regulations clearly state that the evidence of anti-bias testing, or perhaps more palaceably, the lack of evidence of such testing, will be a key factor when courts or regulators assess discrimination claims.
Ah, okay. So not doing the testing makes you look bad if a claim arises.
It does more than look bad. The regulations say the absence of testing can and likely will weigh against employers. It weakens your defense significantly.
So it's like the regulating governance through the back door. Why not just mandate the testing up front, like NYC?
Well, you could see it that way. It's arguably a strategically brilliant aspect of the regulation. It leverages the existing powerful framework of discrimination law. By saying the absence of testing hurts your case, they effectively force businesses into adopting proactive, auditable governance models. Not because of a direct order, but simply as a necessary step for building an affirmative legal defense if they're ever challenged. If you haven't done the work, your position in court is just much, much weaker.
That's a really powerful incentive model. Wow. And to support that increased scrutiny, the sources also note a huge change in data governance, specifically record keeping.
Yes, that's another big operational shift. California has doubled the required record preservation period for all ADS-related data.
Doubled. From what to what?
From 2 years, which was standard for many employment records, to 4 years. And this covers everything: scoring outputs, information about the training data's provenance, the audit findings if you did them.
And why 4 years specifically?
To align directly with the state's statute of limitations for filing civil rights claims under C-Head, they want the evidence to be available for the entire period someone could potentially bring a lawsuit.
Okay, that makes sense. 4 years is a long time for data retention in this context.
It is. It requires robust systems and processes.
All right, let's pivot now to New York City's Local Law 144. Because this isn't theoretical, right? It's been enforced since July 5, 2023. This is the current operational reality for many.
That's right. This is happening now.
So what does NYC demand operationally? What are the must-dos?
NYC lays out 3 essentially non-negotiable mandates for employers using AEDTs. First, there's the independent bias audit.
Independent, okay. What does that entail?
It must be conducted annually. And crucially, it has to be performed by a truly independent auditor. That means the auditor cannot be affiliated with the employer or with the vendor or developer of the tool being audited.
So you can't just have the vendor audit their own tool or do it internally?
Absolutely not. It has to be external and unbiased.
And what specific data must that audit actually reveal? What are they looking for?
It requires calculating very specific metrics, primarily the selection rate for different demographic categories, and then the impact ratio.
Impact ratio.
Yeah, that basically compares the selection rate of a specific demographic group to the selection rate of the highest selected group. It's looking for disparities across categories like sex, race, ethnicity, and importantly, intersectional categories like comparing Black women to white men, for instance.
Okay, so you get this audit, you calculate these ratios. Now here's the part that seems counterintuitive. The source material says NYC doesn't actually mandate that the employer stops using the AEDT if bias is found in the audit. Is that right?
That is correct, and it seems odd on the surface, doesn't it?
Yeah, if the audit proves your tool is biased, you don't have to stop using it. What's the point of the audit then?
But here's the legal catch. It's quite clever, actually. Once you have that independent audit report documenting bias, well, you now have explicit documented knowledge of that bias.
Right. You can't claim ignorance anymore.
Precisely. So if you continue using that tool known to be biased, your potential liability under broader federal anti-discrimination laws like Title VII of the Civil Rights Act increases dramatically.
Why?
Because it starts to look less like unintentional disparate impact, which might have some defenses, and potentially more like intentional discrimination because you knew about the bias and used the tool anyway. It creates this massive kind of self-imposed legal risk if you ignore the findings.
Wow, that's fascinating. Sort of weaponizes the audit data against the user if they don't act on it. Okay, what about the other 2 pillars in NYC?
Pillar 2 is public transparency. A summary of those annual bias audit results, including the key metrics like impact ratios and the data source used for the audit, must be publicly posted on the company's website.
Publicly, like anyone can see it.
Anyone. No logins, no hiding it behind a careers portal paywall. It needs to be easily accessible. This makes it instantly discoverable by the city's enforcement agency, the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, or DCWP, and of course by potential plaintiffs and their lawyers, or even just job seekers. Creates market pressure, too.
Okay, public transparency. And the third operational demand, that one focuses on the candidate experience, right?
Yes. Pillar 3 is advance notification and accommodation. Candidates or even current employees who are based in NYC must receive notice at least 10 business days before an AEDT is used on them.
10 business days. That seems like a long lead time in fast-paced hiring.
It is, and that notice has to be specific. It must explain what the tool does, what job qualifications or characteristics the tool is assessing, and critically, provide clear instructions on how the individual can request an alternative assessment method or a reasonable accommodation.
That 10 business day waiting period, I can see how that creates a really significant, almost unavoidable operational burden, especially for high-volume industries like retail or hospitality.
Absolutely. It slows things down considerably. It's probably the most operationally disruptive piece for many companies using these tools at scale in NYC.
So let's zoom out. We have this conflict, or maybe tension. NYC's mandatory annual public audit versus California's powerful legal incentive model for auditing, combined with strict proxy rules and longer record retention.
Right. Different approaches, different pressures.
If you're a multi-state company, operating in this, well, legal minefield. How do you even begin to manage this, especially when you factor in vendor relationships for the tools themselves?
Yeah, the complexity for multi-state employers is immense. And it's not just CA and NYC. You have other states like Illinois, Maryland, Colorado, all with their own emerging rules and timelines. It's constantly evolving.
So you can't just comply with the lowest common denominator state?
Absolutely not. That's a recipe for disaster. And this complexity is compounded by how California, in particular, is handling vendor liability through its codification of agency theory.
Agency theory. Okay, does that mean if you outsource the AI tool to a third-party vendor, you also outsource the liability? Or are businesses finding vendors just won't take on that risk?
California has made it very clear. Third-party AI tool developers and vendors are legally defined as agents of the employer using the tool. Meaning the buck stops with the business, the employer. Even if you outsource your entire resume screening process to a fancy AI vendor, you, the employer, are still legally responsible for the discriminatory impacts of that tool under FIFHA. You cannot use the vendor as a legal shield.
So thorough vendor due diligence isn't just a best practice anymore. It sounds like a foundational legal necessity.
It absolutely is. This requires really digging into your vendor contracts. You need explicit provisions guaranteeing their anti-bias testing protocols, transparency about data provenance, and critically clear indemnification agreements, where the vendor takes some financial responsibility if their tool leads to FAA violations. Getting vendors to agree to strong indemnification, though, can be tough.
I bet. So for any large or growing company listening right now, trying to navigate this fragmented, complex regulatory environment, what's the single most viable strategy? How do you stay compliant everywhere?
Honestly, the only truly viable path forward, especially for national employers, is to aim to exceed the highest standards.
Meaning comply with the strictest rules out there, even if you don't operate there yet.
Essentially, yes, you need to build a unified compliance framework that meets or ideally surpasses California's most stringent requirements because they are currently among the most comprehensive.
So that means things like
That means implementing robust, ideally external bias audit protocols, even if your primary jurisdiction doesn't explicitly mandate it yet like NYC does. It means training your teams, understanding proxy risks, and it definitely means strictly adhering to that 4-year record-keeping rule from California for all ADS-related data everywhere you operate.
because if you comply with California's high bar,
You are likely compliant, or very close to compliant, across most other jurisdictions currently active or proposing similar regulations. It's about building for the strictest environment to achieve broader compliance.
okay, the lesson here seems crystal clear then. The era of treating your automated hiring or HR systems as some kind of impenetrable black box is definitively over.
God. Yeah.
Whether you're motivated by NYC's explicit audit mandate and public shaming potential, or California's threat of a significantly weakened legal defense if you don't do the work, proactive, transparent, and auditable governance is simply the new standard requirement for staying in business and using these tools legally.
And I'd argue this is actually far more than just, avoiding fines or legal threats, though that's obviously crucial.
How so?
Using that audit data proactively, those selection rates, those impact ratios, allows companies to genuinely assess and potentially improve their actual diversity, equity, and inclusion outcomes.
Turning the compliance burden into something strategic.
Exactly. It transforms a legal burden into a potential strategic advantage by helping ensure your talent pipeline is actually selecting the most qualified and diverse pool of candidates possible, rather than inadvertently filtering people out based on flawed algorithms.
Yeah.
You can use the data to make better, fairer systems.
That's a great point. Okay, so here's our final thought for you, the listener, to chew on, stemming from this cross-jurisdictional conflict and the operational realities.
Yeah.
Given that California might soon pass even more legislation, like the proposed No Robo-Bosses Act, which could mandate human oversight for critical employment decisions like discipline or termination. How might that mandatory 10-business-day waiting period, the one currently required by NYC's advanced notification rule, how might that permanently change the expected speed and flexibility of modern high-volume hiring pipelines across the entire country? Will AI hiring ever truly be fast again once these notification and oversight rules become more widespread? Something to think about.